I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the Business of Story.
I thought it was just a stupid picture of a pig in the ocean. But after hearing that story, I had to have it. Now I wasn't just buying a picture, I was buying a story. Story literally made the picture worth more money to me.
That's what businesses are about. People buy brands, people buy stories much more than anything else.
I work with a lot of big enterprise companies, but let's just say I always tell folks, drop the PowerPoint, close your laptops, start with your story.
If you want people to get engaged and you want people to act, you have to tell them an emotionally powerful story. That's with great characters, it's with uncertain outcomes, and it's with high stakes and drama.
All business strategy is a story.
Hi, welcome back to Business of Story. Park Howell here. So glad to have you along for another episode. A couple of weeks ago, I had the honor of attending Oracle's annual Modern Customer Experience Conference in Las Vegas. And I mean, what a show. Thousands upon thousands of people there. We looked at and studied content marketing, data-driven storytelling, heroic marketing, as they would say, for over a course of 3 days. And I was, honored enough, privileged enough to be invited by Jay Baer and the fine folks over at Convince and Convert as a story brand influencer for Oracle. So it was absolutely great fun. And I joined literally a gaggle of influencers to help Oracle tell its customer experience story. So two of those influencers are the incomparable Amy Schmittauer and her husband-to-be, Vincenzo Landino, talking about a dynamic duo. Amy and Vincenzo are two of the top social media marketers literally on the planet, focused on helping you tell your story through video. Amy is the host of the Savvy, Sexy, Social YouTube series, helping you go after what you want in life. Her show has been around since 2011 with millions of views and has caught the eye of prestigious publications like Inc., Business Insider, and TechCrunch. Amy is also a speaker and author of her new book, Vlog Like a Boss: How to Kill It Online with Video Blogging. Vincenzo is creative director at Aftermarq, the digital agency he and Amy created that brings stories to life through creative video solutions. Vincenzo also hosts the Brand Boost podcast. Together, they work with such brands as Applebee's, Kia, and SAP. So, join us now as we were sequestered in a tiny alcove by the elevators in Mandalay Bay during Oracle's Modern Customer Experience Summit and learn how you too can vlog like a boss with Amy Schmittauer and Vincenzo Landino. Hey, welcome to the show, you two.
Hey, thanks for having us.
How you doing, Park?
This is great. We are literally tucked behind some elevators in a little alcove on the second floor of the Mandalay Bay, and we are here at Oracle. What is it? Their Modern Marketing Experience, but I've also seen Modern Customer Experience, so I'm not quite sure which it is.
So there's a story behind that.
Okay.
Apparently, it is the modern customer experience. So #ModernCX is the overarching event that we're at. There's also other events within modern customer experience. One of them being the modern marketing experience, which we're kind of we're focusing on that. So Jay Baer was telling me. There's like 3 or 4 others, but there's one that focuses specifically like in AI, and there's another one that, whatever they focus in. So that's why it's kind of confusing, but modern customer experience is the event.
And we ought to know that because we have been brought in as influencers for the event, so it's great.
#MME17, #ModernCX. I was like, how many hashtags are there? We got to use them all.
Gotta use them all.
Did you just see Joseph Gordon-Levitt? Can't even think of his name right now. He was amazing in what he's got going with his Hit Record program.
Yeah, I've admired a lot of what I've seen from him. It's funny because he talked about it on stage that this is a company now, but before it was just like a YouTube channel and he was trying to just rally the creators. It's so cool to see him up there, especially like when they bring a celebrity in to speak and the celebrity can actually speak very well. It's not just a chat. It's not just a Q&A. I thought it was fantastic, and I just love what he's doing.
When you think about it, how successful he is in his film career to then take on this. And the other thing that underscored to me, and Hit Record, I guess, is sort of crowd sourcing, but he takes it beyond that. It's really community building around creativity, and everybody gets to remix your stuff and go in and they build. So it's worth taking a look. But he had mentioned, and it really stuck with me, that it took him 10 years to get to where it is today and really getting some traction now, even with this celebrity behind it. And it's kind of been the message throughout this whole seminar about, they call it heroic marketing moments.
Yeah.
But it's all the little things it takes to get there. Have you two have probably experienced that in your own work?
I literally just posted this on Instagram because the thing that he said, it was like, patience is such a big deal. You do want to do the big thing, but there are so many small things that you have to do before you get there. And you have to continue to do that, even when you're lucky enough to have a big thing happen. And I talk about this a lot on my YouTube channel with the community there that's always saying they want to be a big vlogger, they want to have a big personal brand, but they forget that it's just like the practice round of posting one imperfect video that's going to get them closer to where they want to be eventually. And patience, man, it's a very important thing.
Amy, you specialize in vlogging. You had your book that came out in January. Tell us a little bit about that and give us a few tips on when we're trying to tell our stories on vlogs.
So Vlog Like a Boss came out in January, and the subtitle is How to Kill It Online with Video Blogging, because it's funny. I wanted to do that. I wasn't sure a lot of people even knew what vlogging is, but we finally reached a point where remember when blogging was like weird? People didn't know what that was, or they were like, the kids are doing that. We're starting to see that transition now with vlogging, which is really exciting. That book was a culmination of the work that I've done in the last, I've been on YouTube for 10 years now, but it's just been a lot of work with small businesses and helping them use video. I didn't think I was ever going to write a book about video when I'm a girl that makes videos. I'm not a writer, but everybody really wanted it. And it's this really just great sort of manual for executing. If I had to pick out probably the biggest things that taking away from vlogging and reading the book or just executing and actually doing a good job of telling your story, you have to look at the camera like it's a human being, one human being, not 1,000. Or, if you look at the camera like it's a device, those are two very unnatural things that are going to make you shut down. It's much harder to come off relatable if you don't just talk like you're talking to a person, because that effect of like, oh, it feels like we're just sitting down for coffee. It feels like you made that video just for me. That's really, really important. The other thing I would say is you don't have to think about your product in this moment when you're delivering content. You can talk about the things that matter to your audience now. They don't know who you are yet. They don't know if they even need your service. So what can you do to get on their radar? That's the art of vlogging. That's content. That's talking about things that are relevant to other people. And I'm so glad Jay talked about that this morning too. The relevancy, it's people. So how do you talk to the camera like it's a person? But also part of that is really thinking about where they are in this moment right now. They don't know you yet. They don't know if they need you yet. What can you do to get on their radar and start to really fill your funnel for the long term by doing it that way. And I think the other thing is there's so many options. I think part of the reason why vlogging is relevant now today is because you can go live on this app. You can make a video on this app. You can hold a button down on your phone and you're vlogging on this app. And it's so many different ways you can do it now. There's really no reason not to. So my biggest tip is not to really read into the gear that you need or the perfect situation that you need to have. You could literally get started today on your smartphone and you're going to already be putting in that work, those small steps, those practice rounds to getting to the big video brand that you might be hoping to have. So,
is vlogging and live video the same thing in your book?
In my opinion, vlogging is literally blogging, but in video form. So if you're providing value without a massive expectation in return, it's not advertising video, it's content marketing, and it's in video form, that's vlogging to me. I think that live video is vlogging. I really do. It just depends on how you look at it. If we're talking about vlogging in the sense of this is a day in the life, then where does it say anywhere that only one kind of video is going to show off a day in the life? But I've been vlogging for a very long time, which consisted of me sitting down, looking at a camera in one room, and just talking head style, but having fun with it. Those are vlogs to me. So I think live video absolutely can be considered vlogging.
Now, Vincenzo, how do you keep up with this? You and Amy run Aftermarq. You're getting married here in Vegas in a few months. I know you've got your own energy about it, too. You were kind enough to have me on your Brand Boost podcast a while back. So what are you doing in the video realm as well?
Before I go there, your episode is still the top listen episode, and I've had folks like Gary Vaynerchuk and Mike Stelzner on, not that you don't match their level, but people with large followings. And at the time, you hadn't started Business of Story, I don't believe, or
I was just underway.
Yeah, you were just starting it. So, you didn't have the podcast community behind it. And that's an episode that I remember while we were talking, you and I was like, I don't have much to say. I just want to listen, because there was so much knowledge that you brought to that. And so thanks for having us on this show. Also, I have to say that while you guys were talking, Amy made a comment about, gear and not needing gear. The way I can kind of correlate the two of you was when you were talking about storytelling, you never mentioned like, oh, you need to have this to tell your story. You need to have a fancy microphone to tell you. Like, you don't. And if people saw the way we're recording this right now, they'd be like, really?
Yeah, we're in like a closet next to some elevators.
So I think when you talk about true storytelling, which I still feel that in the marketing context is very open. Brands don't understand it. I mean, I asked a question to, I don't know if you were in the room, but I asked a question to the CEO of Oracle about storytelling, and his answer, and I actually rephrased it and asked it twice. Very smart man. Mark Hurd is an incredibly smart man, doing great things here at Oracle, but he didn't answer the question. His terms of storytelling were very different than what we were thinking, and so either it was misunderstanding or whatnot. But anyway, storytelling has a lot of room to grow, and it's great to know that the two of you, Amy and Park, that you both understand it. Telling that story, however it is, it can fit you whatever way it fits you. At the end of the day, all that matters is how that you told it. It's not what medium you're using. Is it a podcast? Is it a video? Is it written? Like, telling a story, the process of actually crafting a story is very, very important, and it's an art that not everyone can. And you have tremendous training. So anyway, now that I've said all that, how do I keep up with Amy? I don't. I just say yes to a lot of things.
I wish.
I just do it. We get through a lot. Things that we have to do, especially work-wise, and having that balance of personal and business together. It's also brought us amazing rewards. The fact that, we're here in Vegas for a week. We got brought in together, which is really cool. We're getting brought in a lot together now to things, but we can still do whatever, what we have to do, for the business while we're here and doing all that. And we still get to enjoy ourselves. Like, we'll stay a couple extra days here to enjoy ourselves. And
run through the wedding plans, I understand.
Yes.
That too. Come on. Stop beating me up over this.
Well, here's a question for you, because you both make this point, and I like it. So you're just about ready to get married. I am about ready to celebrate our 30th anniversary. So I've been doing this a little bit longer than you all. I'll give you the same tip that I asked my father the day before we were getting married up in Seattle area. And I was literally hosing off the driveway. They have a beautiful home up there, and we were having the reception in their backyard. And I was nervous as hell. My stomach is turning and so forth. And I asked my dad. He came out. He's a great guy, great man from North Dakota, Depression-era father, very common sense guy. And I said, Dad, and he had 7 kids. He and my mom, 7 kids. They're still kicking it up in Seattle, 91 and 92 years old, fantastic. And I said, Dad, what was your secret? What do you say? And he looked at me, and all he said is, just give them your time and your love. That's all he said. And he just kind of walked off. Give him your time and your love. It was just that simple. So that's what it, mic drop. Yeah.
We heard that this week too from Robert Swan. He said leadership is simple, right? It doesn't have to be complicated. So that's good advice. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I think communication is so incredibly important to both of us. It's like so meta because it's what we do for a living, and it's also something that you have to specialize on in a personal level.
Very different.
But I think just all the reasons why we're super grateful to be doing what we're doing together. I don't think it would have happened so perfectly if we didn't have strikingly different strengths that do complement each other. And so there are a lot of things that I don't ever want to be good at that Vin is good at. And there are things he doesn't care at all about that I take over on, but they all work together in terms of what we want for building a life together, for building a business together. And so that's what I'm grateful for. And that's why the communication is even more important to me, because I know we're always working toward the same cause. Yeah. And that's huge. And I think we've heard a lot of that today too. yesterday in the roundtables that we did, and it was all about what is the biggest challenge for a marketer today. And when it comes down to it, I think we heard a lot about sales and marketing, and are they communicating with each other? Are they supporting each other? Are they thinking of each other in the same measurables that you probably should, because we're all reaching for the same cause. And I think that's, communication isn't everything. It's not just outward, it's inside too. Everybody's got to be working together.
Well, I want to go back to my question based off of I've been doing this a lot longer than you all have. And it used to be a lot easier back in the day when you had radio, TV, outdoor print, and just didn't have the channels and everything you really wanted to perfect. It had to look perfect. It had to sound perfect. You really took time to go to market with your messaging. You had mentioned yesterday, Amy, that we were a part of a roundtable discussion with the big question of what is the number one problem that we see facing all marketers. And my question for you, and as you said, it's so much easier to go online to do your vlogs, videos, podcasts, whatever. It doesn't have to be perfect. So that's very much of a benefit to what we do in this day and age, but it is also a bane in that too many people putting out too much garbage that competes with the important messages. And I know that's, it's questionable of what's important and what's not important. But if you're trying to cut through, it's truly not just enough just to jump on and start blabbing, right? I mean, you got to have a point.
No, you do. But it all has to do with, we're all competing for whatever reason. But at the same time, are we really? Because if we know exactly who we're talking to, there's a lot of noise out there, but you're going to cut through if you actually understand who that person is. And I think even at your table, you guys came to the conclusion that big challenge for marketers was knowing your customer. That's all this is. The only reason why I stepped into the marketing of very busy social media marketer space in 2011, and I just said I need a place to host my thought leadership because I want to get hired by this particular kind of customer. All I have to do, ROI is good to go if I'm getting hired. If I make a video and people are hiring me, if that's happening that way, great. It's going to take some time to get there, but that's ROI for me. It's not vanity metrics. It's not any of this other stuff. But you have to do all of that. You have to know who you're talking to. And then if you do, and you actually, in a vlogging sense, you're looking at the camera lens, or in a podcasting sense, you're talking to a microphone. But when you're doing that, you know who's listening or you know who's watching. That's how you cut through. When I came into this busy space, the only reason why I made a difference is because I knew exactly who I was talking to. It was somebody who didn't give a crap about social media, is trying to run a business, and everyone's saying, you better start a Facebook page. And they're like, no, I don't want to. So they're Googling the things that they're trying to bootstrap. I wanted them to come in, watch a video, learn how to do it, but have a good time, because it was a chore that they didn't want to do. And because I was focused on that, I won. And suddenly, because I was on the gravy train of video, now it's been the year of video for the last, whatever it is, 5 years. I'm like, yay, it's still the year of video. I'm still relevant. Awesome. I just happen to be in the right place, but it wouldn't have made a difference. There's a lot of people that have been making videos since that amount of time. They didn't stick it out because they lost sight of who they were talking to.
Back to the question you asked, though, you say, oh, did it get easier? But at the same time, it's a bane, right? It's kind of like the bane of our existence.
It's just so easy to communicate everywhere.
It is. But what's not easy is the story, right? Is knowing your customer, is crafting a story that fits who your customer is. And so, yes, it's easier to physically create content, quote unquote, for those of you that can't see. Content, it's a lot harder to do it well nowadays because there are so many places you can put it. I mean, there's businesses, companies that are pumping out content on one medium, let's just say Facebook or their blog. And their audience is probably in a completely different area. So they could be telling somewhat of a decent story, but it's not even in the right place now, right? So it's finding that. There's so many things to think about now because you're trying to rise above every 10, 11-year-old with a YouTube channel or with a Vine account. Well, not Vine anymore, but whatever the new Snapchat, whatever it is out there. I mean, brands are directly competing with those types of individuals, and those kids, those 11-year-olds are becoming brands now. That wasn't happening in the 40s to 50s, and before, obviously not before that at all, but the advertising age kind of started, I would say, like true advertising, and maybe you can correct me, but probably in the 30s, right? Where really that picked up and then I wouldn't say it peaked, but in the 60s, you saw a lot more of that. We have the Mad Men and all that, those types of things. And, now everybody's an ad agency. Every company has to be a media company now. They have to produce their own. You can't just outsource everything anymore. You have to be able, because no one's going to tell your story as well as you can. And so, yeah, it is tough being in a position that we're in, where we want to come in and help you tell your story using video, but that's where we differentiate too. We're helping you. It's a collaborative effort to tell your story, you, the brand, you, Oracle, you, whoever, to come help you tell that story, find out what your story is, and then tell it, rather than just say, hey, we're going to come in and craft some fake story for you and put it out there, because that's not what's going to work. You're a brand that's been around forever, or maybe not, but you're a brand that was founded on something. Let's find why, let's find who, and let's blend those together and meet them where they are.
Let's talk about that. So we are all battling this digital ADHD out there, and you're right. We've got 11-year-olds. How do you go about it, Vincenzo, to help your customers cut through the noise, especially using video?
Well, I'll answer that directly first. You focus on what works, period. You put all your effort into your strengths. You don't go, if your company isn't good on Snapchat, then don't go to Snapchat. If that's not where your audience is living and consuming your whatever you're putting out, you don't have to be there just because some guy said you have to be there, or some,
Do you have an example of a client that you worked with that was like really floundering out there, and then you came in and said, oh, let's change you over to this, and then, you had video that conveyed their story?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple I'm thinking of. We worked with a company called homes.com. And there's still some challenges there. And again, it's because it's such it's so new, and for them creating video is very like Amy says, it's an advertisement. Mm-hmm. There's no story. There's no, and that's not to anyone's fault in the company. It's just that's the way it was, because that's what everyone thought you had to do. I have to be on video, so let me stand here, or let's just jam this down your throat because that's what we have to do. We created video.
They default to features and functions.
That's what everybody, and there's nothing wrong with that, because most people who are not in this space don't realize it. They don't get the difference. And we came in and we worked with them. We created a series of videos. I would say we definitely helped them with it. I would also say it was a little bit of a it was definitely collaborative. We gave them a lot more direction, but it's still a work in process. And that to me was an eye opener, because as much as you can preach, like, you need to tell a story, you need to not make it so advertising heavy, or just buy this or go to our website. You still have, when you go to the higher ups, the C-suite, they're like, no, we need our brand in there. We need it has to have a direct call to action. And so then when you start looking at that, you're like, okay, so now we have red tape to go through.
Well, and they're looking at the ROI of story. And quite often, Amy, and you probably see this too, both of you, when you talk story to people, they think they know what you're talking about, but they really don't know what you're talking about. They think it is just going on and on about features and functions. And there was a slide that went up yesterday. In the B2B realm, 80% of the content created never sees the light of day. And I've got to believe within that 80% of content, there are some really remarkable, true, honest-to-goodness stories that could come together that talk about the human impact that a brand is actually having. Have you seen that in your work?
Absolutely, because I think this is just another buzzword that's being created, right? Because unfortunately, it's the best word for it, but as we use it too much, people are losing sight of what the actual definition is. And the story to a company might mean, oh yeah, the story of our product. It's just like, well, that's not really what we were thinking, actually, because the product is its own. And of course, the product has a story because it's solving a problem, ideally, on some level. But that's not really why you're here. The problem is why you're here. So, how do we get deeper on that? So I think that's the biggest thing is, you can't measure ROI on like feelings and journeys and things like that. And sometimes that's the best story that you get. I mean, that's frustrating because we want to serve our customer. We want to solve a problem, just like they're trying to solve a problem. So when we go in and say, we have to tell this story and this is how we see it coming out, and this is how it's directly correlated to what you do and how you make money, but this is what's going to be relatable to people. And they don't see that and they don't want to do it. And they're just like, actually, we were thinking you could do a demo of our website, and it's like, oh, okay, not the same thing. It's very hard to convey that because the ROI switch just does not connect in that scenario. And so even though we're trying to do the best that we possibly can for the client, you also have to remember you're making the client happy with what you do. So that's unfortunately the mess that we're in with the storytelling buzzword, because so many things are that the 20% that are making the light of day are being called stories and may not actually be the story.
And I want to add, so you said something about digital ADHD, and that's one thing I despise is everyone's got ADHD now. And if you have it and it like medically, fine. I'm not making fun of you, but for everyone else who's like, I've got ADHD, like, I don't believe it, because good content, good material, good photography, good video, a good blog post, people will find it. It doesn't matter if everybody, again, another air quote here, because I hate those words too. Everybody is, everyone's on Snapchat. No, not everybody's on Snapchat. And if you're creating something that's really tailored to the right customer or the person that you are talking to directly, they'll find it wherever it is. They're not going to, and I think it's a little bit of a misnomer, this whole like ADHD thing, because we do have all these notifications and devices, but if you look at the normal average user, and I always pull my brother for this. I don't know why. My poor brother. I always use him as like the average user. And he'll tell me things like, did you see, we're big Steelers fans. He'll be like, did you see we signed this guy? Did you see this guy? Did you see him lifting in the gym? And I'm like, no, where did you see that? He goes, you're on Facebook all day long. You're on Twitter. You're on Instagram all day long. He's like, what do you mean you didn't see it? And I'm thinking, so I look at it and I'm like, wow, he's actively seeking out where those things are, whereas I'm not, because sometimes I have to be not focused, but sometimes I have to find, all these apps, and I have to know at least what's going on, because customers do ask, like, should I be on here? The answer is almost always no, because these new apps are like fly by night, they flash in the pan. But when I talk to my brother, it's like he goes to where his favorite brand or favorite person, his friends, wherever they're creating their content, right? And most of the time it's, let's say it's Instagram, he goes there for it and he gets it, consumes it, and he's done. And I think that is what a lot of us forget in the marketing world, is that you don't have to be everywhere. We are the ones creating this ADHD issue, telling people they have to be here and there and then there and then here. And it's like, no, stop. That's where the noise gets created. And I'm sure you see it. And as a true storyteller who knows how to craft and really bring out incredible stories for brands, individuals, whatever it is, you must get so annoyed as to some of the things you see out there. I mean, where it's just, there's no direction. Like Amy said, it's so easy to just click a button and create it, which is good. That's amazing that we have that opportunity. But no one wants to see every second of every day of something if there's no cohesive. I mean, I'll sit there and watch 24 hours of somebody if there's a cohesive story behind it, right? I love
that cohesive story. And I think when I talk about ADHD in the digital realm, it's just that very thing of so much content out there, it's hard to break through. And what I love the irony of is truly the ancient power of storytelling. How our reptilian brain are hardwired to create meaning out of the world is what cuts through. And it starts with a human story. What is the impact? So I've been doing brand story strategy for a long time. And when I ran my ad agency, my response to a client after they'd say, okay, Park, this is great. We've got our story together. Now what? Was always, well, we got to fix your website. We got to change your marketing. We got to get your PowerPoints in play. But that has completely changed for me now. I said the next step, they still have to do all that, but the next step is we've got to find the stories internally in your organization that support this overall brand story. And by the way, they're not filled with product, service, features, and functions. They are how do you impact people in what you do. So it's not what you make, but it's what you make happen in their lives. And in this day and age of the ADHD digital domain, it's those human interest stories, those small moments. They don't have to be these big epic S stories. They're these little moments that have the biggest impact on us.
Well, you watch Undercover Boss at all? Have you ever watched it?
I've seen it, yeah.
So what I love about that show is that they focus on, 3 employees, normal everyday employees. They're not C-suite, they're not executives, they're actually in, and a lot of times like fast food, whatever it is. So, and what do they focus on? It's the story of that person. Oh, me and my kid are living on the street. We live out of our car. I need this job and usually and I get chills even thinking about it because I've seen such amazing stories come from that show. And then of course the CEO give them like $30,000 and buy them a car and buy them a house and give their kid and that's all great and fine. But when you step back for a second, you think about it, you're like, oh wow, we just created the hero's journey almost, right? And I think that's fascinating. And when I look at that show and I compare, I actually used that as an example for one of our clients just last week. It's like, this is what we need to do is we need to tell internally, the messages internally. This is what people care about. People want to know because I relate to you and you. I relate to the person working behind that counter. I don't buy or frequent a restaurant or something because of maybe the name. Half the time you have no affinity to a name, but it's the people that work there. How quickly will you stop going to Nordstrom if they were all jerks to you, right? Maybe that's not the overarching brand. And this happened with American Airlines, right? And United. And people were trying to compare the two. And I said, it's very different. One was, they said, United said that was their policy, right? Remove people, this and that. And it was like, there was an uproar. The CEO came out. It's like, whoa, what are you doing? There was something wrong internally. But American quickly came out. They apologized. They suspended the employee. And when I see things like that, I'm like, okay, this is interesting because if you're a United flyer, is it the brand or no, it's the person because you don't care. But you're instantly bashing United because of one person's mistake or a few people's mistakes. And again, same thing with American. And I don't think they got bashed as much because they quickly cleaned it up. But again, it could have been that one person that affected your experience that now you could, they could lose a customer for life at that point. So, you're absolutely right. When it comes to the stories that we want to hear, we're dealing with humans. We want to deal with humans. We want to talk to people. That's why I'm still skeptical about like robots and all this stuff. AI. It's fascinating. I'm not like knocking it. I just still want to deal with a human. I hate like automated phone call things and like I can't get to a human. Most of the time I just hang up.
So Amy, going back to your vlogging, and you've been doing it for an awful long time, do you have one that stands out in your mind to sort of underscore this idea that it is the small moments that have a big impact? Something that happened to you while vlogging one time that you had an aha moment or you saw it really blow a client up in a very, very big way?
Well, let me just speak from my own experience because, something extraordinarily ordinary turned into something incredible just in my own career. For 3 days a week for 3 years, I didn't miss one episode of Savvy Sexy Social. I uploaded, and I had lots of usual suspects in my comments, and I had lots of new people in my comments, and it just grew and grew. And there was one particular person who would comment every now and again, and it was just like, oh, great, hi, good to see you again, Tyler, good to see you. And then all of a sudden, he found out I was in San Diego a few years ago and was like, oh, actually I was in LA. He said, if you can come down to San Diego, there's this really great social media event going on. I'll buy your ticket. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I ended up attending and it was really cool. We got to sit down and sort of get to know each other and, whatever. He worked for a skate company at the time. And then he just was a viewer. And we just became, we knew each other and we kept in touch. And now he does social media for Tony Robbins. And he provided me a testimonial for the back of my book. And I just did a webinar for Tony last week, and they just featured me on the blog. And it's something as small as showing up every single time you're going to show up because you have no idea who is watching. You have no idea. And that's a story I could tell a million times over about people I've worked with, people I've helped. But that's one really great one in my case where I showed up. And the normal person that says, I'm going to launch a YouTube show. What's the average for podcasts? Usually podcasts don't get past 7 episodes. Think about that. That's just recording into a microphone, no offense. But like video can tend to be a lot more overwhelming because you're like looking yourself in the face and you're editing that. And there's a lot of issues that people have and they don't get past probably episode 5. So to show up consistently and be able to let people know and trust that, you have no idea just by making that small action, just by getting the video out when it's not perfect every time, that you're going to show up and they're going to watch and then you have no idea how it's going to pay off. It's incredible.
Great information, especially when this recording isn't perfect right now, either with people coming in.
Yeah. Whatever. I can talk over.
I had some of my best episodes on my podcast were ones where I was walking on the street talking solo, and I had a thought, and I recorded it into my phone with like just my my headphones. It sounded okay. You knew it wasn't from a mic, a good mic, but it worked, and I got the most feedback when I was just being natural, and here's a thought, and those were some of my more successful episodes. I'm like, wow, this is crazy.
The ultimate guerrilla marketing. Wherever you are, that thought pops in. And we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to follow up on a podcast you've recently done about brands and do they have a voice, and what Heineken has just come out with, a pretty amazing video on finding common ground between folks. So we'll cover that right after these messages. All right, folks, since we have been focused on video storytelling in this episode, I have an interactive Story Marketer of the Week segment for you that places you at the center of the story. Here's what I want to do. Whatever you are doing right now as you're listening to this episode, stop. Find a quiet place to sit down and then close your eyes. I'm going to play a story for you that is just over a minute long. What I want you to do is just drink in this story and then let the theater of your mind fill in the imagery. When we're finished playing the story for you, I'll give you the next instruction. So you ready? Find a quiet place, sit down, close your eyes, push out the craziness of the world, find that meditative state, and let's listen.
Berlin, 1987. My father was a guard on the west side of the Berlin Wall, while another man guarded the east. Eventually, the wall came down, but even after moving away, my father carried a piece of it with him. While I grew up, it lingered over all of us, a barrier between him and the rest of the world. I decided I would help by taking him back to Berlin to show him the beautiful place it had become. When we arrived, the stranger who answered the door became familiar. The guard who patrolled the opposite side of the wall now welcomed us as a friend. After that, things were better for my father.
Now that you've heard this remarkable little story, go to the show notes for this episode on businessofstory.com/podcast and see how the story you just visualized compares with how it's told on YouTube. When you're finished, you'll see why this brand is again my Story Marketer of the Week. Then ask yourself, how am I bringing my stories to life? Welcome back to Business of Story, and our guest today, Amy Schmidtauer. Did I say that right?
You did. You cut yourself off.
I don't know why I have such a hard time with that. Amy Schmidtauer and Vincenzo Landino. You two. So what are the combined names going to be after September?
It's going to be Amy Landino, but we call ourselves Schmenzo.
Yeah. I think we should just start going by Schmenzo, because I'm actually seriously considering Amy Schmidtauer Landino, but I think people will want to kill me if I do that. So
Yes.
I think it's Schmidtastic, as you say. So that's great. So Vincenzo, you did a podcast not too long ago about brand and brand voice, and does a brand get to have an opinion in the world? And we've seen this in all the wrong ways, and we've seen it in some really right ways. And Heineken just came out with a video that was demonstrating, hashtag is open your world. And they did a really fascinating study where they connected people of just complete opposite opinions. They didn't realize they had opposite opinions. They first found common ground as human beings, and then they revealed the fact that these people had these opposite opinions, and the reactions were pretty amazing. So to me, that is a brand, Heineken, taking a stand on, look at, we are all the same, whether our opinions are different. So from your interview, what are you finding? Do you think brands do deserve a voice? And what does that story look like?
Well, I think, yes, while brands do deserve a voice, I think it's very difficult in today's day and age. And of course, all the things we just talked about, earlier, it's very difficult to have that voice without repercussion, right? And some will say, okay, well, if you don't stand for something, what is it? If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, that kind of thing. And while I think that's true, brands have a very slippery slope to deal with, because you're not just dealing, it's not just me, Vincenzo, and Neil making a statement and dealing with it. It's shareholders and stakeholders and this and that. And so who is your responsibility to? And my belief is that if a brand has responsibility, if you're a public company, you have responsibility to shareholders and stakeholders, whatever it is, then you have to take that into consideration. Can you have an opinion and a stand? Absolutely. But if you don't have folks that all believe in the same thing, then I really don't think a brand should be making those statements. However, I do believe, like Heineken, right? Something like that statement is that was almost like a human tendency, right? They didn't say we're left, we're right, or anything. They're just saying, hey, look, you people can all come together over a beer, right? Which is fantastic. But at the end of that video, it was like, let's have a beer and talk about it. And now, again, we don't know the ins and outs of the video being created, but the message was amazing, was absolutely incredible. And I think that right now, brands, I feel for a lot of brands out there, we've seen Under Armour, we've seen Hobby Lobby, Chick-fil-A, who else? Recently, I'm trying to think of what. Well, we saw PewDiePie was kind of the impetus behind that episode I recorded,
And Uber, is doing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Uber. I mean,
What was that commercial with the Jenner?
Pepsi. I mean. And quite frankly, I mean, I'm a white male. I didn't even pick up on it until I read all these things about it. So,
well, they were some of the most beautiful activists ever pulled together in one spot.
Absolutely. Listen, there's no doubt. I didn't pick up some of the things that people attacked Pepsi for. I didn't. I just watched it. I was like, this is not realistic. But I didn't pick up on certain cues in there that will really set people off.
Well, look at how people took that story and ran with it, and they created a whole anti-story to that.
Well, so now, like, if you're Pepsi, right? If you're Coca-Cola, you're laughing, right? But if you're Pepsi, you're sitting there saying, wow, we tried to take a stand on something. Hey, let's make the world a better place, which no one did it better than Coca-Cola, right? In the 70s. Was it the 70s? The late 70s? Anyway.
I would sing that for you, but you wouldn't want it.
Yeah. Amy's got a good voice.
But I think that here's the fundamental difference. Pepsi chose to take a side, which is it is taking a risk. And if you don't look at all of the elements of relatability and then you just take that risk, like, you're probably going to see more flack. What Heineken did was just say, if you got to know somebody, you may not have the same opinion that you think you have. And it was just like, how do you feel about, transgender? Or how do you feel about feminism? And they just said, just talk about it. Just make your opinion known. And then we're just going to have you get to know somebody. And then you find out, oh, I am more open-minded than I thought. Mm-hmm. But it took a human being a human being to me to understand that. Heineken made you think, where Pepsi was just like, this is what you should think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to Publicis London for creating, making that video, or just that whole campaign. That's the way, in today's environment, brands need to talk, because you can't take that. I mean, if you're on the left, if you're on the right, you're whatever you come from, you can't look at that video and say, oh my God, they took a stand, against feminism. They're anti-feminist. Like, you can't. You can't. You're a complete, jaded individual if you believe that video was poor taste. But then again, now you got Pepsi that did something where they tried to take a stand and they completely alienated about probably 50% of the people. But here's the other thing. Again, more caveats with all of this. In the world we live in, like you said, all this ADHD we've got going on, no one's even talking. What is it? A week later,
it's come and gone. Yeah.
Right.
The same thing happened with Under Armour. People were up in arms. Kevin Plank, he said he agrees with Trump. Oh my God, we're never going to buy Under Armour again.
Yeah.
Their sales spiked. Everything spikes. I pay attention. I don't know about you, Park, but I like to pay attention to the markets, right, and watch the markets and see what people are really. Because here's the thing. It was the same thing with Snapchat, right? And I know we're going on a little bit of a tangent, but people are like, oh, Snapchat, it's great. It's amazing. Did you put money into the company? No. Okay, so I'm going to look at this, watch this. And when you look at all of these companies that are in the news over something, they have a little blip for like a couple hours, and then it spikes. So to me, that's just telling me you can have a voice if you're willing to deal with whatever that little blip is. And I think we're seeing companies plant some of these things, some of these stories that are happening now, almost like, oh, let's just send out a tweet that might be, charged in one direction and just see what happens. And then we'll just say sorry later because it's not going to affect us.
A great social experiment with it. Final question for Amy. So how can a brand really share their voice? And if they want to take a stand, using vlogging, live video or whatever, in your experience, how would you coach them? If they want to step out and say, we do want to take a stand on something and we are going to use video, how would you coach them on that?
I think just the short answer is don't just tell, show. And you should show to tell. And that's why vlogging matters right now. That's why documentation matters right now. If you want to take a stance on something, don't just say it. Show why you actually care about it. Actually let people see into that perspective. That's all that Heineken commercial was. Just let people just share their perspective. So whose perspective is that? Is that somebody in your organization? Is it the employees? Is it customers? How are you showcasing them by allowing them to just talk about what matters to them and why? And show why it matters. It's okay to do just a regular format video or something like that of a talking head, but what could you do a little bit differently that's going to make somebody actually connect with what you're saying and allowing people to see what you really care about? It's so easy for people to have an opinion. It is so easy to have an opinion. So back it up with real action. And if you're taking real action, you'll have something to show.
Don Draper said it best in Mad Men, where I think it was with the Heinz commercial. If you ever watched Mad Men, mm-hmm. In the Heinz commercial, which an agency just ran the ad from Mad Men, like that was created in the show, and if you can capture the customer's imagination, your end consumer's imagination, you win all day. Because the imagination will run wild, that'll create a lot of things. So the whole Heinz thing with that was, let's not show the ketchup. Let's just show all the things that ketchup goes well on and let people think to themselves, oh, wow, I want Heinz ketchup on my ketchup, on my hot dog or whatever it is. And that's where brands need to use things like video to show and tell and create this visual experience for them to then let their mind go wild. And video allows us to do that, right? Where a blog, maybe not everyone can read can read and create in their head. Not everyone has that, but when you see it visually, you're like, oh wow, and you start picturing and imagining things based on a good story. That's where you win, but that's difficult. It's very difficult. It's not easy.
What were the 3 tips that they gave us this morning to cut through the clutter out there? The first one was be entertaining. So to your point, you have to be entertaining. Number 2 is have a share of culture. Be up to what's happening, going on. And for the life of me, it's in my tweet, but I can't remember what number 3 was.
I don't remember either.
I don't know.
You know what? We've got these things called phones. I'm gonna look it up. But no, I love that you said, or that entertaining was there, because brands want to be stiff about that, and they can't get out of like, I'm not an entertainment company. How can I be entertaining? And so I can't find the tweet for the life.
And yet they all are entertainment companies in this day and age.
You have to, because that's how you keep people coming in. No one's going to sit there and, how many times do you go back and say, I really, really want to go and watch that car commercial?
Right.
Well, the Heineken did it. It was an entertaining video that showed you sort of a social look, a study, if you will, of these people. It was certainly up with culture, with what's happening right now. And they had a wonderful tagline, open your world, open your mind, open your world. And as you said, Vincenzo, over a beer. That doesn't hurt. So how could folks learn more about you? And Amy, how can they get your book?
Oh, yeah. So everything about what we do at Aftermarq is at aftermarq.com. Aftermarq is spelled with a Q. So AFTERMARQ.com. And Vlog Like a Boss can be found at vloglikeaboss.com. I highly recommend you go go there. It's of course on Amazon and all that kind of fun stuff. But I have a bonus on the site to incentivize you a little bit to get something a little extra there. So,
Vincenzo, anything to add?
Yes.
Not to put any pressure.
No, you can find us there at Aftermarq. I'm at Vincenzo Andino on Twitter, where I am super active. So come check that out, or come check out my Twitter account. Talk to me, see what I'm interested in, and I'm more than open to having conversations with anybody and everybody about pretty much anything.
Well, I will say you two are the probably the most energetic couple online and off I've met. So it's really fun to follow both of you. And thank you for being here on this edition of Business of Story, coming to you live from Oracle Modern Marketing Experience, next to the elevators, roughly in a closet.
Pretty much.
All right.
thank you for having us on, Park.
Thanks, man.
Right on.